Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and welcome to Season 26 of Pokemon Go Battle League. There has been a massive amount of move updates, and I'm going to be doing my best to cover as many as I possibly can on this channel. In today's video, I'm covering a move update that was not on my radar whatsoever, and that is the big buff to Drain Punch. Now, while Drain Punch on Shadow Sableye is probably still a meme, I ended up having some hilarious sets with it, as Drain Punch now does way more damage, but it also boosts up your defense, meaning that if you can fire off a couple Drain Punches, you kind of make your Sableye immortal. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches, and in game number 1, we're off to a very neutral start, leading Charjabug into Shadow Alolan Ninetales. Now this is actually a Charm Alolan Ninetales, which in my eyes doesn't really make a lot of sense, because Alolan Ninetales should typically be running Powder Snow since Powder Snow is such a great move now. I'm going to farm up a ton of energy with the Charjabug. This matchup is uncomfortable with them on Charm, just because 4-turn into 3-turn, you always have very awkward pacing. I'm going to save the Charjabug, save switch into Dondozo, and my opponent banks a ton of energy and then brings out a Azumarill. Dondozo got a pretty big buff with Waterfall. In my eyes, Dondozo is more of an Ultra League mon, but as you can tell from the IVs, I probably have one of the best Great League Dondozos in the entire world. Dondozo has never spawned in the wild, it's only in research and raids. But while casting the Seattle Regional Championships, I got a rank 15 Dondozo from a trade, the 1-13-14. So even if it's not going to be the greatest in the Great League, I still wanted to throw it on the team because I may as well, considering how insane the IVs are. I'm able to combo play with the Discharge, opponent saves a Azumarill and then brings back in the Alolan Ninetales. Ninetales takes the knockout with the Weather Ball. I know that I do have energy on Dondozo, and I snipe them down with the Waterfall. My opponent, I think, is highly likely to bring back in the Azumarill, and they do. I'm hoping that Surf will be able to secure the knockout. Surf lands, Azumarill, 1 HP remaining, they barely hang on, and I'm just going to let Dondozo go and trust in Sableye. In the back, my opponent has Umbreon, and this would normally be a guaranteed loss for Shadow Sableye. But I'm running possibly the worst Sableye moveset in the entire game. I'm running Foul Play and Drain Punch. I fire off the first Drain Punch, that's doing super effective damage, but it's also boosting up my defense. Now I can boost my defense a second stage by going for Drain Punch number 2. This Umbreon is losing quite a lot of HP. They go for the Foul Play, and look at this damage. They go for the Foul Play. That does absolutely nothing. I basically just made my Sableye immortal. I've already at +2 defense. We now go to +3 defense, and they just can't damage the Sableye. They try for a catch. They fail the catch. Opponent sees the writing on the wall and concedes the match. Picking up another Fairy lead in the next match, Charjabug into Florges. My goal for this matchup is just to try and get the Florges low, and then maybe I can even Shadow Claw it down with the Shadow Sableye. Florges goes for the Chilling Water. I immediately return fire with the Discharge. Discharge is a pretty weak move, and especially so after being debuffed, but it's still going to add up a little bit on the Florges. My opponent tries for a catch onto Furret, and this is when I realize that I actually don't have a great response to a Furret save switch. So I'm going to send in Dondozo. I know this is a Trailblaze user and it will hit for super effective damage, but Dondozo's stats are pretty crazy. My opponent fires off a Trailblaze into a boosted Swift, and I still survive. Dondozo barely able to hang on and make the last second Outrage. Outrage forces the shield from the Furret, and now I'm going to be bringing in the Sableye. Sableye get a CMP tie here with the Drain Punch, but I end up getting 1 turn bring-in lag, and unfortunately that means I cannot go for the Charge Attack priority tie. So I'm just going to bank the energy and then combo play with the energy loaded on my Charjabug. X-Scissor will be enough to secure the knockout onto Furret, and back in comes Florges. Florges, they have to respect the Discharge. I reset the debuff from earlier, so the Discharge would get them critically low. My opponent ends up throwing on Alignment. Again, these are early days of the season, so sometimes you're going to encounter trainers who do not have the most optimal movesets or optimal charge attack timing. Foul Play will hit harder, it will take the knockout. In the back is Azumarill, and I don't have Power Gem or Dazzling Gleam. However, up a shield and up energy, Shadow Sableye, believe it or not, is actually going to be winning this game for me. Sableye should be able to make it to 3 Foul Plays, and with the Shadow Claw damage from the Sableye, that's actually going to be enough to take home this win. I debated going for a Drain Punch, but realized that I don't need to buff up my defense here. What I need is the damage. We make Foul Play number 3. They are critically low on the Azumarill, which means this will secure the knockout and take the win. Hopping into the next match, leading Charjabug into Shadow Drapion. Shadow Drapion's a Pokemon that I do think is back. So far, early season, at least day 1 of the season, Drapion felt incredibly good to use. Drapion, it's so spammy, a lot of the Pokemon that gave it trouble got nerfed, And I do tend to really like Drapion metas because Drapion is just so incredibly flexible. I shield up the crunch, I get crunch debuffs, and that is very unfortunate. That's actually going to force me to pivot out. So I fire off the X-Scissor and then just send in Dondozo. I'm hoping my opponent will throw energy, but they do not. Instead, they're going to be answering Dondozo with a Azumarill. I'm walled here, but they can't really do any damage to me either. The bubbles are going to be doing nothing. Dondozo has a huge stat product, which means that their play rough is really not going to do much at all. My opponent is going to fire off their energy on 9 bubbles, so I will just CMP tie them here with a Surf, because that should burn my switch timer, and now I can send back in the Charjabug. So I pivot into the Charjabug, and I know that a play rough will not secure the knockout, so I'm very comfortable letting this go. That Drapion is absolutely loaded on energy, so that is what I have to use my final Protect Shield on. I fire off Discharge. This should be enough to knock out the Azumarill. My opponent sends back in the Shadow Drapion, and they're firing off their Aqua Tail instantly. I'm just going to let the Charjabug go. Charjabug definitely did its job as I send in Dondozo. I'm going to shield the Dondozo because I am very close to a Surf. So I fire off the Surf. My opponent makes a nice catch as they catch onto Empoleon. This chip damage will genuinely be helpful as I send in the Sableye. My goal here is to absorb the Hydro Cannon and then just farm up and take the knockout with Drain Punch. This is going to boost up my Sableye's defense and mean that my opponent will not be able to farm me down even though I'm very low. I'm 1 away from the back-to-back Drain Punches, which means they're going to have to fire off their energy instantly. And by instantly Aqua Tailing, now I should be able to Waterfall down with Dondozo. In comes Dondozo, Waterfall's coming through, we get the farm down of Shadow Drapion, and that is a good game. Hopping into the next match, picking up a very neutral lead Charjabug into Furret. Furret is a pretty massive problem for my backline, so I'm very happy to catch the Furret on the lead. We can trade X-Scissor damage for Swift damage and just generally try and get them as low as humanly possible. Furret, only 2 away from the back-to-back Swifts. The next move will be reached on Charge Attack priority. I'm going to try for a catch. Unfortunately, I do not get it, and it ends up being a pretty simultaneous switch. I send in the Sableye as they send in the Stunfisk. Stunfisk goes for the Mud Bomb. That does do quite a lot of damage, and I'm just going to look to boost up my defense as I go for the Drain Punch. The Drain Punch gets no shielded by the Sableye. That I don't think was the greatest use of Drain Punch ever. I probably could have gone for the Foul Play to hit for quite a lot of damage and then gone for the Drain Punch after. I'm going to farm up CMP tying and hoping that this is going to be enough to secure the knockout. They have taken quite a bit of damage. They do put up the shield on the Foul Play, and now I have a tough decision to make. Do I double shield the Sableye? I decide yes. I'm committing to the Sableye. In comes the Furret, but Furret is going to be losing Charge Attack priority. Drain Punch lands, down goes Furret. I am very heavily boosted now on this Sableye. Basically, no matter what my opponent sends in, I'm going to survive the fast move pressure. I bank a move for later, and I end up sniping with the X-Scissor that's loaded on Charjabug. Charjabug able to secure the KO. In the back is Shadow Annihilate, and this could be a problem, because Annihilate is going to be able to ramp up their attack with Rage Fist, and I don't know if Dondozo can survive a boosted close combat. Dondozo is monstrously bulky. I send in Dondozo, and I cross my fingers, and I hope. Dondozo's pacing is a lot better than what it once was. Can I survive a close combat here? If I do, I win the game. And it turns out they were actually on Ice Punch. But I did go on PV Poke after the fact, and a +1 close combat only would have done 72% to a Dondozo. So Dondozo would have actually lived the +1 close combat, which is absolutely absurd. Dondozo, it doesn't have the greatest moves ever, but its stats are absolutely insane. Great lead in the next match, Charjabug into Shadow Celio. My opponent is going to end up banking a little bit of energy and then safe switching into Swalot. Swalot will be firing off Ice Beam. Ice Beam, while not threatening a ton of damage onto the Sableye, will still add up, and I'm immediately going to return fire with the Foul Play. Foul Play lands onto the Swalot. The nice thing here is I should be able to CMP tie them to the next. Now, they don't know that I have Drain Punch. Foul Play would secure the knockout, so I'm really hoping they shield, and they do shield, and this is exactly what I was hoping for, because now I have a +1 Sableye. Ice Beam, that's not really going to do anything. They're going to make a last-second Sludge, but that's not going to be a problem. It's resisted, and my Sableye has boosted its defense. So the Sludge lands, they pivot in Charjabug, and Charjabug is going to take some pretty considerable damage from Foul Play. Foul Play lands, I'm just going to let myself get farmed down, and then I can bring in my own Charjabug. My Charjabug is very, very strong in this game. My opponent will get some nice damage as they land the X-Scissor, but now I can just wait the turn. Unfortunately, my screen mirroring actually disconnected during this part of the battle, so I frantically reconnect the screen mirror. I was able to land the X-Scissor onto the Charjabug, and now my opponent sends back in the Celio. That was a pretty big distraction for me mid-battle, but I decide, you know what, I'm just going to win the game with Dondozo, because I know that Shadow Celio can't really do any damage to this Mon. Look at how little damage this Body Slam is going to do. This is a Shadow Celio Body Slam. That does nothing to Dondozo. Opponent tries for a catch. They do not get it. And my opponent will resign the match. We get a great lead in the next match. Charjabug into Noctowl. Noctowl is a Pokemon that does benefit from the Wing Attack buff. I'm going to watch for a catch attempt. And there it is as they send in Whiscash. Now Whiscash is about to get sent to jail by Dondozo because Whiscash has Mud Bomb, but Mud Bomb, even with a slight damage increase this season, is going to be doing basically nothing to Dondozo. This is the one thing that Dondozo does well. It just eats charge attacks for days. Now, this is early season, so we do see my opponent fire off back-to-back charge attacks on alignment, but Dondozo is going to get to double up on Surfs, and that just makes life so comfortable for Dondozo. Surf lands, down goes Whiscash, my opponent reveals their final Mon is Charjabug, and I'm going to look to pivot out of this matchup. Surf is going to connect, it's actually a Shadow Charjabug at that, and from here on out, I'm probably just going to end up firing off Discharges at the Charjabug, because I can Volt Switch it into a range where Discharge will KO, but Discharge also covers for a catch onto the Noctowl. So Discharge is going to be shielded, and I'm just going to farm up to the back-to-back. I can't quite get there before my opponent fires off energy, but now I'm at the back-to-back, which means I can just fire off my Discharges without having to wait a turn. Discharge number 1 is going to be shielded by the Noctowl, but I'm able to make it to Discharge number 2 as well. And this Charjabug plus Dondozo is just absolutely taking over. I can even stay in with the Charjabug and get all kinds of damage. I try and snipe with Waterfalls on Dondozo. My opponent is able to fire off a last-second Shadow Ball to secure the KO, but now I can just send in Sableye. The Sableye is just simply too healthy at this point of the match. Noctowl goes for the Sky Attack. In comes Shadow Charjabug, and I may as well show them that I have Drain Punch. The game's over anyway, we could have farmed down, but we're going for the Drain Punch, buffing up our defense. Now even a Shadow Ball will not kill us, as we Shadow Claw down the normal type and take the win. Tough opponent in the next match, playing against Marshall Galde. It's a very bad lead, Charjabug into Swalot. I end up safe switching into Shadow Sableye, and he's going to answer with Noctowl. Noctowl is a Pokemon that I'm pretty unimpressed with so far, but unfortunately this is a matchup where Noctowl should be pretty convincing. 2 foul plays are not enough plus the Shadow Claws to knock out the Noctowl, and he knows it. However, I could have Power Gem, so I'm going to overfarm and bluff a potential Power Gem as I go for the Drain Punch. Drain Punch does not get shielded, and that is really unfortunate. Sableye is now going to be hit with a move, but I'm +1 on my defense. I'm going to overfarm as much as possible, and then just take the knockout with the Drain Punch. So I fire off the Drain Punch. I only get a Great somehow. The Great misses the knockout by 1 HP. I don't know how I didn't hit all those bubbles. I was trying to hit all the bubbles, but unfortunately, because that charge attack was only a Great instead of an Excellent, he lives on 1 HP and he's able to save it. Now, in the moment, I thought that had knocked out the Noctowl. I did not realize that the Noctowl had survived, and that, unfortunately, a little bit of foreshadowing here, does come back to bite me. As Swalot gets Sludge after Sludge, I'm going to farm up 1, go for the Discharge, and he catches back onto the Noctowl. I was so confused that I full charged the Discharge, because I was like, how is there a Noctowl? I knocked out the Noctowl, but apparently I didn't. The missed bubbles end up costing me in a pretty big way. Back in comes the Swalot. I fire off the X-Scissor. Either move will secure the knockout here, but unless Dondozo can win the ones against whatever's in back, I'm in quite a lot of trouble. Swalot takes the knockout with the Sludge. I'm hoping the Waterfall can KO, but it does not. Swalot hangs on. I'm just going to keep myself healthy, so I will put up the shield. In the back is Hawlucha, and unfortunately, I am going to lose this game, as Hawlucha will be able to double up on Flying Presses before I can double up on Surfs. It's going to be close, but unfortunately not close enough, so I will resign the match. Hopping to the final match, we get an amazing lead Charjabug into Jellicent. My opponent safe switches into Wigglytuff, and oh boy, do I have an answer for Wigglytuff. I bank a Discharge, send in Dondozo, and you have never seen Wigglytuff look so helpless neutrally as against Dondozo. Dondozo's bulk is just absolutely absurd. They can go for Swift after Swift. I gave them a huge energy head start, and it just doesn't matter. Dondozo farms up to the back-to-back Surfs, and if they want to keep this Wigglytuff around, they're going to have to double shield. they decide to just let that go. In comes Jellicent. I'm looking to pivot out of this matchup, so I send in the Sableye. I'm expecting my opponent will go for a Surf Bait and a Dip, so they actually full send the Shadow Ball, which surprises me, and then they stay in. And then I realize, if they're staying in, they're always going to be shielding. This is a free Drain Punch. So I go for the Drain Punch, buffing up my defense, and I'm able to get the shield with that Drain Punch. And now, things are looking incredibly good. I'm going to try for the Shadow Claw farm down. If I don't get it, I'm just CMB tying with another Drain Punch. This is going to put my defense at +2, and mean that even though I've taken quite a lot of damage, I am not getting knocked out by the Shadow Ball here. So, as they fire off the Shadow Ball, Sableye survives, they send in Furret. I saw the typing, so I ended up blind throwing the Drain Punch. Foul Play would have done more damage, but either way, this is just a shock and awe campaign. I had a move on the Sableye, a move on the Dondozo, I have a move on the Charjabug as well, but no, my opponent top lefts, they concede the match before they get hit with the third move from the Charjabug. That would have been a very, very fun moment to end the video on, but sadly, they top lefted first. So, let's get a final verdict on Drain Punch Sableye. Is it a meme? Is it OP? I'm leaning more towards a meme, but it was a very funny meme. I just really wanted to run my new exceedingly high-ranked Great League Dondozo. Even with Waterfall being 11-10, Dondozo's best bet is going to be in the Ultra League, and I do have an Ultra League Dondozo that I'm pretty excited to try out. Because Dondozo, it has Lapras level bulk in the Ultra League, so it is massively, massively tanky. And Charjabug ended up being a very nice core pairing for it. Drain Punch Sableye, there are a few games where it genuinely feels like a real moveset, like the Umbreon game where I was just able to boost my defense up infinitely, and Sableye basically lived forever. Sableye tanked that foul play like it was nothing. They could have thrown 2 or 3 more foul plays, and it just wouldn't have mattered because that's how boosted Shadow Sableye was. And it's very, very funny to see a Pokemon that's normally not known for its bulk just suddenly get infinitely bulky because of defense boosts. It's a little bit shades of Dedenne, but obviously Parabolic Charge was a very efficient charge stack, whereas you don't get same type attack bonus on Drain Punch, and Drain Punch, I believe, is a 40-40 move. So Drain Punch, it got massively improved in terms of its damage, so it's more of a real move by far than it ever was. It's still probably a meme for the time being, and especially considering the Championship Series is an open team sheet format, I think once you reveal that you have Drain Punch, it becomes a lot less effective. But the Go Battle League is a blind threes format, which means, especially with a mon that offers a ton of shield pressure like Shadow Sableye, because Shadow Foul Play basically two-shots everything, in a lot of scenarios, you can set up the Sableye to where you can Foul Play once, shield their move, and then bait with the Drain Punch, and if they shield the Drain Punch, then suddenly you're just so far ahead. So it's a very inconsistent moveset, it's a very technical moveset, but I ended up having a ton of fun with it, and oh my goodness, I'm still not over that Umbreon game, because I saw the Umbreon, and I thought, wait, I'm a Sableye, I lose this. And then Umbreon just got absolutely destroyed. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you had fun watching today's video, please do leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And an extra special thank you as always to our channel members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide to the channel is so appreciated. So thank you guys so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.